rural fiction author, Maya Linnell gathers inspiration from her rural upbringing and the small communities she has always lived in and loved. Paperback Hill is her fourth novel, following Magpie's Bend, Bottlebrush Creek, and Wildflower Ridge. A former country journalist and radio host, Maya also blogs for Romance Writers Australia, loves baking up a storm, tending to her rambling garden, and raising 3 bookworms. She writes to a soundtrack of magpies, sheep, and chickens on a small property in country Victoria, not far from here, where she lives with her family, their menagerie of farm animals, and the odd tiger snake or two. Welcome, Maya. Alison Reynolds, in the middle here, lives by the sea in Melbourne with her family and a heater-hogging, dentally challenged dog named Rosie. The Near Daphne Experience is her debut adult novel after a long career writing children's books. Alison decided to concentrate on writing after a series of mediocre jobs, including working for the most curmudgeonly boss in Melbourne. She has a Master of Creative Arts and is excellent at drinking coffee, braving Victoria's icy seas, and losing herself in books. Welcome, Alison. And last but definitely not least, Ellie O'Neill. Ellie is an Irish-Australian best-selling author. She writes commercial fiction and is the author of 4 books. Her new novel, published with Alan Unwin, will be released in June 2022. Which we've already had. I'm like, what? And that was Family Matters. Yes. Her writing has been described as charming, whimsical, funny, and touching. To date, all of her books have been set in Ireland, and she's not entirely sure why. Australia has been home for over 10 years, but her storytelling blooms from the streets of Dublin. Her 2014 novel, Reluctantly Charmed, was a top 10 Australian debut and a bestseller. After completing every book, Ellie announces to anyone with ears that she'll never write again. She is currently working on her 5th book and looks forward to dramatically throwing in the towel once more. Please welcome Ellie O'Neill. So, what I thought I would do is ask each of the authors to pitch their current novel, just so everyone has an idea of what their books are about. Starting with you, Alison.
Hello, is that working? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Tied up in. My novel is The Near Daphne Experience, and it's about Daphne Buckley, who's a 30-something psychiatrist, and she's brilliant, and she's determined, and she's decided to find her perfect match, which is a good name for this panel.
Yes.
So with the help of her old school friend Celeste, and the help of her mother, whose help isn't entirely welcome, because as she likes to remind Daphne all the time, a career is all very well, but you can't hug that at night in bed. She embarks on her quest for the love of her life, and how wrong could that go? Well, very wrong. You don't know how far Daphne's going to go, and also she also has a tame psychopath lurking in the background.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alison. I love that book. Ellie, Family Matters.
Yeah, that sounds great. But Family Matters is set in Ireland, and it's a generational story centred around 4 women in one family. And each of the women are kind of reaching a life crisis point, which is, you'd say, kind of appropriate to where they are in their age bracket in their life. So Molly is a stay-at-home, she's a struggling kind of stay-at-home mom to 2 young kids, and then Rosie is kind of in a Tindler, swindler situation. Yvonne is recently divorced and struggling with standing on her own 2 feet, and she's running the family pub into the ground. And then the matriarch of the family is Evie McCarthy, and Evie feels like she doesn't have long left She feels like she's probably got another 12 months left, and so her kind of mission is to sort out the girls in her family, and between them all, they kind of come together, and it's really a story of family and pulling each other up and over all of these kind of crises that we all meet in our lives. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Maya, Paperback Hill.
Yes.
Paperback Hill. Sorry.
Paperback Hill, which is very confusing when you're often talking about ebooks, audiobooks and paperbacks, and then you follow that up with talking about Paperback Hill. But Paperback Hill is a rural romance. It's set in the Western Districts of Victoria, around about the Grampians region. Now, we've got a fictional town called Bridgefield, but if you know where Cavendish is, if you know where Harrow is, you're kind of thinking that beautiful rolling green hills, those lovely breadgums. Diana McIntyre is my main protagonist. She is one of 4 sisters, and I've written a book on each of the different sisters. But Diana's the eldest, and she's the mother hen of the lot. She's also got 4 very boisterous boys of her own that keep her very busy, one of which is a future cricket star. So she's got a lot on her plate. She's recently lost her husband. It's not a huge spoiler to say that because it's on the back cover. And she has a dream of starting a dahlia farm. Now, microflower farms are very interesting, and I have my own passion for flowers. So I've kind of gone with my own dream of wanting to start a dahlia farm, and I thought I'd give that to Diana here. So there's a whole lot of baking, there's a whole lot of gardening, there's a lot of family dynamics. We also have Ned Gardner. Now, he's a locum pharmacist. He is taking his children on stints around the country, here, there and everywhere, not putting down roots, but all of a sudden he has to come back to the Western Districts. And he does happen to have a background in dahlias. Very convenient.
Excellent. I loved it. And it was, all your books are so incredibly well written and just so enjoyable. Alison, I wanted to ask you how it was writing your first adult fiction after writing, so many successful children's books. That shift, and it's something that you'd wanted to explore for a while, or you have written.
I'm like a lot of people when COVID struck. I don't know about all of you, but I'm from Melbourne, so we're pretty shut up. So I wondered what to do, and I just come off writing. I've been fortunate in that I've had quite a lot of children's books published, and I just finished writing some chapter books for the Americans. And I don't know if any of you know, dealt with Americans much, but they have quite a lot of constraints on what you can write. Like one book I got sent back, I'd called it Planet Robotica, and I got an email back saying, I think we should call it Planet Robotica. You know why? And I thought, no, would you know why? No. And so, have any of you dealt with the American publishers? They're very charming. Like, they might be saying, we don't like this, but you'd never know till you get to the end. They're just gorgeous. And then they said, people might think of erotica, robotica. And I thought, oh my God. Like, that's just dirty mind. So then I thought, I'm just going to do something totally different. And I'd had an old idea. So I just lost myself. It was really fun, and I could say what I wanted. And she didn't say erotica in it. I should have now, looking back. But I could, it was just a lot of freedom, and it was just something really different. And yeah, I just loved it. It was a really good chance to have a break and try something different. So yeah.
Fantastic. And no spoilers today, but I do want to ask you about how you wrote it, if that's okay. So it's not a spoiler, is it? No. No. So the Near Daphne experience is fantastic. What Alison has done is Daphne is the main character. However, aside from some clinical notes, you never hear directly from Daphne. It's emails, it's text, it's all her circle talking to Daphne. So how did you do that?
It's always fascinated me how we can pretend to be some way, or, you can really not like someone. They're not your cup of tea, and a really close friend will like them, and you realise that people show different facets of yourself to other people, and often the most wonderful professional person. Their personal life's a mess, and yeah, just all that's really intrigued me in how we put our own things on people, what we want to see in them, and so I thought I'd explore it, and it's all written in emails and letters and text messages, so you just get little snippets. And thinking back, that might have been my attention span in COVID. Did anyone else find that? Like we were all reading short stories and everything. So I think that. So but I've always been interested in how people show different sides to different people, and I was going to put her in it, but I didn't, and the publisher said, no, that's one of the best things, that she's a mystery, and I make the reader, it unfolds in front of you when you read it, and you think she's a lovely woman. And did you think she's lovely at the end, Rob?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to be her best friend.
Yeah. Be very careful. If you've got a Daphne in your life, tread carefully.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic how it's really up to the reader to start building this picture. Normally we're either inside the main character's head or very close to it. So yeah, it's excellent. Highly recommend it. Ellie, Family Matters was your fourth book. How is it writing, well, you're now on your fifth book, but approaching and writing a fourth book compared to 1, 2, 3?
Oh God, I mean, every book comes with a lot of challenges. In a way, though, but now, now I'm writing my fifth book, but I think the big difference for me is that voice in my head is gone that says you can't do it. The negative, the kind of the circle that you get yourself into, that you're what are you thinking? Who says you can write a book? So she's not there anymore. And I think that's positive. And so I have a lot more self-belief and confidence in terms of my writing than I did initially. So that's definitely a positive, yeah.
And does each book give you a new sort of challenge or problem? Absolutely. So this book is Family Matters is a generational story, but I wrote 4 different points of view. So it's writing 4 different kind of characters, 4 different tones of voice, 4 different. My youngest character is probably about 24, 25, and then the oldest character is late 70s. So you've got to bring them alive on the page. They've got to think differently. They've got to speak differently. They've got, they're very different people, and so that's a challenge because my 3 other books were written in the first person. So that was new for me, and that's great as an author that you get to do these different things and to challenge yourself differently. And that was. Oh, so was this the first time you'd written from multiple points of view?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I loved it.
So good.
Yeah, I loved it because you can't get bored, can you? Like with all these people living in your head talking to you. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Maya, this is a good segue because Paperback Hill is your 4th book in a series. So, and each book is told from a different sister, so a different point of view. How was it coming to the end for now of this series? And you must have built up so much McIntyre family history, and were you conscious of kind of trying to weave in some closure for some of the other characters besides Diana?
Yeah, it is tricky because when you put together, the first book, I decided I was going to write about each of these 4 sisters. So I was learning about them as I went along and finding little bits about them that just made them unique. And so by the time I'd gotten to the end of, the final draft of Paperback Hill, I'd written about 500,000 words with this family because each draft is about 100,000 words, and then by the time you've revised it, there's another 20,000 words, and you take 10,000 words off the start, in the structural edit, and then you add another 10,000 at the end. So there's a lot of back and forth that goes into putting together a book. And, as everyone sitting here will well know, there's a lot of stories that get left out when you're writing a book. So you've got lots of these little plot lines floating around your brain. And I have a tendency to want to throw lots of things into my manuscripts, and my publisher, who's absolutely lovely and very patient, says, Maya, we've got lots of going on here. Let's maybe if we just pull out this particular storyline. But yes, so it was tricky to try and say farewell to these characters, not just for me, but for the readers, because people fall in love with these people. These are people that remind them of their aunts or their uncles or their teachers, or their children or their grandchildren. So these are people that feel very familiar to me, but also it's very rewarding to know they feel very real to the readers as well. So I get some lovely letters from people saying, please don't stop writing about the McIntyre family. Yeah. We'd like to know what happens to Angus. And now he's the father of these 4 girls, and he's been a bachelor for a long time. And I fully intended to try and give him his happy ending or a new relationship in Paperbark Hill, because I was aware that this was going to be my final book with these characters. And I started writing it in the 3rd book, Magpie's Bend. I wrote, quite a big storyline with him meeting a new partner, and that kind of fell to the wayside. And then I thought, okay, yes, I'll get to that in Paperbark Hill, and I still didn't get quite to do that. But never say never. I feel like maybe there could be some cameo appearances from this family, just because I have people writing to me saying, well, what about Cameron's story? He's the oldest son throughout this book, and he's 16, 17. So maybe by the time I get to my 8th book or 9th book, he might be of the age where he's starting to look for a future partner. You never know.
True. And I was a bit concerned about, no spoilers, but I was concerned about Angus on the way back from the cricket, and I was thinking, oh no, Maya, what are you doing? So when it came to write Paperbark Hill with Diana, because she's appeared in the 3, was it? I don't want to say easy, because it's, it is what it is, but to write from her voice, knowing, you've had 3 books to kind of really get to know that character.
Yeah, and so that is a good thing, Rob, in that you get to spend a lot of time with the character that's made appearances throughout the first 3 books. You get to know, what she's passionate about, what she will tolerate, the lengths that she will go for her family. And family is such a strong and intrinsic theme throughout these novels that family's always at the forefront of what she's got going on in her mind. But in the story, she's also got, her next stage of life where she's lost her husband. And I was actually going to kill off Angus in this novel, but I
knew it.
No, I couldn't. That was always going to be the opening scene, a funeral, and it was going to be Angus's, and I decided I couldn't do that. But so I did get to know her. I knew what she liked, and that conflict for Diana, putting her own needs aside when she's thinking about her family and her sons and the lengths that she'd go to dedicate all of her time to them. I know that there's many mothers in the room and fathers also in the room that put their own needs on hold to help their children and make sure they're prospering. But, how long can you do that and be satisfied? So I wanted to examine that.
Yeah, and you did it beautifully. Really well done. Perfect match. So, in Family Matters, we have an app, The Love Guru, and a bona fide matchmaker. So I wanted to ask our panellists about love and all types, from romantic friendship to this idea of a perfect match. So starting with you, Ellie, how do you define what a perfect match is?
Well, in Family Matters, my matriarch character, Evie McCarthy, is a matchmaker. And in Ireland, up until about the 1950s, there was a tradition of a town matchmaker in rural villages. Essentially arranged marriages, that's what it was. And it was always a man, and the man would meet with the families in the local pub, in the snug. I don't know if people are familiar with the snug, but they were kind of a private room off the main bar, and that's where these arranged marriages kind of setups would take place. So my matriarch character, Evie, is a kind of a contemporary matchmaker, and she does something similar in her pub, in the snug, and she meets with couples, and she kind of becomes a bit of a marriage counsellor or whatever. But Evie doesn't believe in a perfect match. She thinks some people are matched, and that's great, but she thinks a lot of people are not, and they shouldn't be going around matching up with other people because that isn't right for them. And she's first and foremost a businesswoman, and so she always wants to get paid first, and she charges quite a hefty fee. Her granddaughter has also just started off a matchmaking app, which I was kind of inspired by. Tinder, this is kind of when I started looking at writing the book. I was looking at dating apps, and I wanted to write something completely different, but that's another, something kind of darker about data capture. And so Rosie has started off an app on Tinder. So I kind of am juxtaposing the kind of the traditional matchmaking with kind of modern day matchmaking. And her story doesn't turn out very well. Rosie's story doesn't turn out very well, but yeah, and again, it is a business. The matchmaking is a business, and she's approaching it as a business. And while it was, just as an FYI, Tinder is worth $42 billion. So there is big money and big business in matchmaking. So yeah.
I loved how you mentioned Evie approaches it as a business and is very much like hand the cash over before she'll even open her mouth.
Yeah, because even though she has this, I've positioned her as kind of a woman with the sixth sense, that she has this ability to see this kind of magical light between souls who should be matched. And she really cherishes this beautiful moment that she can have with couples. But again, first and foremost, she wants to see their money.
Yeah. Thank you. Alison, what's a perfect match for your characters, do you think?
On my characters, because my husband's in the room, so.
Well, there you go.
We were, the three of, we were actually talking about this, and I don't feel like there's a perfect match, but in Ellie's book, you've all got to read it, but Evie, the older matchmaker, she said something really wise. She said, you've just got to, it's almost like tolerate and rub together and find what you can put up with and what you can't put up with. And no, my husband's fantastic, but no, we are. But it's funny because, I think Tinder's really brutal. So in my book, I said it in 2001, 2002, because I wanted to get away from the pandemic. So I said it back then. I thought, happy time. And then I forgot all about the Twin Towers being, so that changed our world anyway. But I had Daphne put an ad in the personal pages. And do any of you remember the personal ones in the paper? Yeah. I was always fascinated by them. So because of that, she meets, well, you can imagine what she meets. One was an older man who called himself 50-ish, and then he turned out to be 78. But I know that happens from friends. Everyone lies a little bit, and especially in the personal ads back then, you didn't put your photo in, so you didn't know what you were getting, which was probably better because you could. So the whole idea was that they wrote emails and got to know what they had in common, and But I did put bushwalking because I don't know about any of you when you used to write resumes. I don't know why we'd always put. Do you remember that? Oh, you're too young. We always used to put. We like bushwalking. Did you?
Yeah,
do that?
you have to put your interest in.
We're all into bushwalking, and because it is like applying for a job. Yeah. So I made it and played the piano, which I haven't done since I've left school, which was a while ago now. Yeah. So but it's that whole thing about finding love and just the terrible, funny things that can happen. I was very lucky. Some friends let me share their stories. Like I ran it past them because they had some pretty funny things happen, and they're all happy now, so we can all write. Yeah. So but this whole quest for perfect match, I think it'd be really boring. It's like, when you're in Queensland and it's sunny every day, I think, I'd love to see it. Which sounds terrible, but you want something, a few different gardens. So, I think like what Evie said, someone that you can, what was that? Yes, it was.
Is it the one about the toe clippings?
Yes.
There's a scene
this is so funny.
It's just a little scene where Abby's been married for years, and her husband on a Wednesday night decides this is the night he's going to do his toes. So pulls you know, shoes off, socks off, pulls out the big leg, big foot in the living room while the TV's on. And she's looking at it going, oh my God, is this what I have to look forward to every Wednesday night at 7:30? You're going to do your toes. And he's like, yeah, this is it. And so they come to a compromise that afterwards he will vacuum the floor and, and he will make her a cup of tea and he will give her some biscuits. And that is marriage.
Yeah, and my husband's very private with his toe cutting, so that's good. Something, yeah, I think something should be private for a perfect match. Yeah.
And Maya, for you?
Yeah, so I think one of the joys of writing rural romance is that it's universally acknowledged that everyone wants to be loved. So whether it's the love of their family, and there's so many different languages of love as well. So I really like to be able to explore. Diana, her love language is baking. So staying up at 10 o'clock at night to make yo-yos. Yes, it's stress therapy, but it's also so her children feel nourished. She's, they're making cakes to remember special people. They're, giving flowers as well. So that whole notion of using nature as a healing therapy as well as baking. So I really like to delve into that. And also the second chance love as well, because I have so many friends that are, their first marriage hasn't quite worked out. They're moving on to their second really important partner. And of course, what does that mean for the children and the blended families and how that impacts on them as well, and the relationship between the parent and the child when there's a new love interest on the scene. So I wanted to talk about that as well. And also, it's a very grey area, estrangement between families as well. And I wanted to look at what that looks like, forgiveness. And even though, I've got a lovely smiling lady on the front cover, I've got my flower garden is also on the front cover. But rural romance has a really good opportunity to explore some deeper and darker issues. So I've got grief, we've got addiction, we've got family estrangement. There's lots of different things that are layered into these stories, and it's really nice to be able to promise my readers that they will finish on an uplifting note. But there's some dark moments that go through it as well. So it's nice to explore those.
Yeah, and I think you did such an excellent job. You've got these contrasting families, right? You've got the McIntyre clan who are very close. They're still together. Their mum's passed away, but they catch up every week, Sunday roast, and then you've got the Gardner family who are estranged, and they're now, the way you portray them, I guess, trying to reconnect after such history. I think you do that brilliantly. It's so, it comes across so authentic. So, yeah. So, going into book 4, was that the Gardners, had they arrived like that, or was this something you were exploring as you were writing?
Yeah, so with Ned Gardner, so as I mentioned, he was a locum pharmacist, and the interesting thing about when you write the manuscript and you've got these great ideas and you've got some really strong characters and some strong issues that you want to explore, but not everything falls into place right at the start. So throughout that story, I was writing Ned as a XXX, what his occupation was. I didn't know what he was going to be until I'd finished that first draft. And then to have him as a locum pharmacist worked really well. I knew that there was going to be some estrangement issues, but that, I guess, strong, solid base of, he's come from a family that's lost a lot, and what it takes to try and reconnect as well. So there was a lot of interesting things to explore there, but that getting back in touch with nature and drawing on things that you've learnt when you're younger, whether you appreciated them or not, and then kind of pulling that back in to see how, forgiveness can come through that avenue. So, yeah, I liked exploring that.
No, there was two parts in the book where you actually made me cry from that family, because it's just so well done. Like, it's incredible, and to move your readers that much is a real skill. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rob. And it is interesting because when you're writing these stories and you're sitting at the desk and the tears are flowing because you've written a scene that feels so raw to you and to your characters, and to be able to put that on the page, and sometimes it'll just appear at the end of your fingertips. You haven't consciously worked out what that scene is going to contain or how it's going to end. And any time someone opens a door, it could lead your story in a completely different path. But to feel that rawness of the memories that they've had and the reasons why they've had this estrangement with their mother, and the beautiful memories that help them reconnect as well, and going back through the Christmas decorations. And yes, they've had some really tough years, and there's been a lot of Christmases where they have not been together. But when you can pick up an ornament and go, remember that cat, remember that time when we did this, and people can have a bit of a laugh and shed a bit of that history and start working on a new one.
Yeah, brilliant. Ellie, you're intergenerational family. So you mentioned we've got 4 points of view, two sisters, their mum and their grandma.
The granny,
Yeah. How was it writing the different generations? What did you sort of draw on there to really capture those voices and I guess their concerns or how they're viewing the world?
You kind of, I bet you guys are the same. Like, you kind of inhabit your characters. Like, they, I'd find when Evie, the matriarch, she's a bad hip. I'd nearly find I'm doubling over when I'm writing her. It's stuff like that. Like, Rosie is really young and she's in love with life. So I'd automatically feel quite optimistic and, upbeat when I'm writing her story. And, literally, physically inhabiting the characters, and, and that's how they start. They become more and more real to me as I'm writing through the first draft, and getting to their story, getting through their story, and always trying to stay true to their story. And also, and that was another thing with writing 4 different characters, is that I've got each of them has an individual character arc that has to land by the end of the story, but then also I have kind of like a main plot line that's kind of running through the story as well that also has to land. So it was, all the time you're trying to think of how do I get there? Like, because I could see from the beginning of the book, I knew where it was going to end, but it was just that constant, where keep everything moving, keep it pushing, keep pushing through till we get to that point. And and they surprise me at every point of what's going to happen next, because I don't plan. I'm desperate. Like, I wish I planned. My husband has bought me like whiteboards and post-it notes, and I've got a highlighters coming out my ears, and I do nothing with them. Like, it's literally just me and the computer screen to try and figure out what comes next. So
Oh wow. Alison, you've got the Buckleys, who are incredibly waspy, and that mother and daughter relationship. And also Jonathan. So were you doing the same as Ellie and inhabiting the mind of a psychopath, or how was that?
You probably would hope that I wasn't. No. No, maybe a little bit, but you didn't have to hide the knives or anything. But no, it was probably, I don't know if you two, I didn't realise till later how much I write from my life. But there are a few things I did run past people. But my mother always said to me, don't write about me till I'm dead, and then you could write what you like. And no, I did love Mum, but she was a funny woman, like she was. And I had a very... a snobby, she was fun, a really fun grandmother, so she's in it a lot, but they're very good at doing, you'd be wearing something, you're thinking of wearing that, and like, I remember my sister, my grandmother saw her and said, did you get dressed in the dark, dear? And but she could get away with it because she'd say it in a lovely way. And also probably because she wasn't saying it to me, she was saying it to my big sister. I could put up with that. But I think, like, we've all had mothers, and being a mother myself, it's so strange. It's like, I've got a lot more confident, a lot more, I understand my mother a lot more, and my grandmother, because I probably use Mariana, the mother, she says outrageous things, but a lot of those things, I think, because I think I'm turning into an old bag. Like table manners, and I've got 2 little grandchildren, and apparently now you don't tell them to say thank you and please, because they're meant to do that themselves because of gratitude. And Mummy, my character, would never put up with that. And I put up for that date and I said, no, darling, what do you say? You've got to say please and thank you. And yeah, but it was so much fun exploring that mother-daughter relationship. But I had a much nicer mum than, but Daphne would be annoying.
Well, yeah, Mariana Buckley, who's Daphne's mother, she's a bit of a show stealer. And has just some very laugh out loud, just terrible lines that she just says completely oblivious. Or maybe she does know.
No, but wouldn't you like to have said some of those things, Rob, to people? Come on, be honest. It's like wish fulfillment. She says all the things. I know they're ridiculous, some of the things that you kind of carry on that are passed on from your parents and everything, but you just can't help it. I mean, you know, having your soup in a certain way. It's ridiculous. It doesn't matter.
But she does pass it on as constructive feedback for people, yeah.
She does everything for her. She lives for her daughter. Everything's for Daphne. She means very well. She's just pretty... Yeah, you wouldn't want to have her as your mother.
Yeah, no, she'd be quite intense. Now, I wanted to ask Maya about reader expectations, and in so much as when you're approaching a new work, are you thinking about like the letters that you've got from readers who really like this particular character and hope this is going to happen, or that you're going to set it here, and how do you deal with that, or is it something you consciously put out of mind?
I was having a really interesting conversation with Michael Winkler, who was on a panel yesterday, a couple of different panels yesterday, just this morning over breakfast, and we were talking about reader feedback. And I said I received the loveliest emails from people that have read the books and love the books, things that resonate with them, what it's reminded them of. So yes, it's definitely in the back of my mind what my readers like about the books when I'm writing them. I'm really keen to deliver more books that they're going to enjoy, because obviously if people keep enjoying them, they'll keep buying them and I'll get to keep writing them, which is quite nice. Sometimes people will say, oh, look, I noticed that you mentioned the Horsham Hospital in such and such book, or you know, you had Ballarat in this one, or Hamilton. So all local towns, and anyone that lives within Cooee will know those different locations. Is there any chance you can mention Woolthorpe in the next book? So, you know what? It's not that hard to do. You know, they can be having a conversation. Where are we going for New Year's Eve? Oh, well, let's go to Port Fairy, but we'll just drop into Woolthorpe on the way and drop off something. So it's really easy to just drop those little things in, and I do it just like you, Alison. I write little snippets in, and I know Ellie does it as well, that just, you know, is going to make someone that knows you smile. So I'll write for readers that I don't know, I'll write for readers that I do know. And in one of my books, I've got the Huppertses providing the Christmas turkey for lunch. And, you know, we would buy our Christmas turkey from the Huppertses in South Australia every year for Christmas. So I know that when my sister read that, she'd go, the Huppertses, you know, it's quite an uncommon name. Yeah. But I will also think of different road names, different winery labels and things like that, and give them, my good friends from high school would be like Whitty and Kent Winery. Well, you know, I've got a best friend whose surname's Whitty and a best friend whose surname's Kent. So I have those little things that I quite like to do, and it amuses me. It doesn't hurt anyone else, but these little snippets that people will find in the book that kind of hark back to things that are close to me.
Yeah, excellent. And Ellie, with your readers, do you get anyone asking for sequels or?
Yeah, my first book, I don't know if anybody read that one, that really resonated with a lot of people. It was, it kind of harks back to Irish folklore, and that there's a storyline, a thread in it of Irish fairies. Which are not like kind of traditional fairies, like these are quite mischievous, and it's about them kind of stepping into contemporary life, and but it really resonated with some people. This book also sold in the US, and I got a lot of unusual emails from people about fairy lore and fairy folk tales, and I'm no expert in it. It was just something that appealed to me at the time to write the book. Yeah, but there's a whole subculture going off there that they were willing to embrace me with open arms, and I don't know that I wanted to go there, to tell you the truth. But similarly, I also drop in friends' names, and I've pretty much named all the characters in my books after my nieces and nephews, and they couldn't care less, but I think ultimately they will. But I do stuff like that, and again, it's just stuff to make me laugh as well, and that I enjoy. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And Alison, were you slipping in a few Easter eggs for friends and family?
Yeah, oh, well, probably they know a lot of my stories anyway, so they probably recognise them, and I make a lot of fun of like all this snobbishness because it's ridiculous, and actually it's like my mouthpiece. Like I think, why do we put up with all these silly rules and everything forever? But yeah, I was thinking, no, I take out names in case I've got very scary friends, one who's here. No, I would never put any of them. And also, I don't know if you find this, what happens if you put in one friend's name and you don't put in another one's? Yeah. I mean...
That's the next book.
Yeah, really? Oh, I would personally be I'd be a bit... Oh, well, I thought I was your friend. And, like, don't you think you would? So I'm very, very careful about that. But one thing I do find is people see themselves in it who know me. Have you had that? And I'm thinking, really? What, that was... Like, I've got a sister who's a vegetarian. If I have a vegetarian character, she thinks it's about her. Like, what an ego, really. I'm thinking, it's not about you. Or so, I don't put anyone's name. I actually go out and take out people's names that are,
I have, sorry, just on that, in my first book, I have parents in it who are quite comic characters, and they are 100% based on my own parents. And these are very narcissistic characters, like, and I even named them my parents' names, and they read the book and they did not recognize themselves. So people see what they want to see.
I don't think they read the book. They probably...
That's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, tricking.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, we'll open it up for questions. I just wanted to ask, before we do, what can you share with us on what you're working on next?
Oh, Maya's the good child here, so she should start off.
Well,
they're not too bad. Yeah.
They're not. They're lying. I have a book that's supposed to be coming out in winter next year with Allen and Unwin, which I signed contracts for a couple of years back. And I've handed it through to my publisher, but I'm in the middle of a rewrite at the moment. So, well, I handed it through, but it doesn't have enough baking and it doesn't have enough gardening in it yet. So I've got to work in threading that through as well. And in rural romance, community is always a large character in the story. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work just to massage it to really make sure you're kind of hitting the notes. So I've got a little bit more work to do. And there's always so many stages in the process of writing a book. So I'll do a first draft, leave it a month, read it, edit it. So second draft done, then I send it to my publisher. And she has a read and says, okay, well, how about this or this or this? Have you thought about that? And I'm not sure why they're doing that. And so at the moment, I'm working on that process at the moment. So that is my September completely sewn up from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock while the children are at school every day of the week. I am working my butt off to try and get that ready to then send it back ahead of structural edits, which are the big picture edits.
Yeah, fantastic. I just wanted to ask, because reading your books, like, I start dribbling because there's so much delicious food going on. And I know Maya's a fantastic chef. Where do you come up with new ideas for? I mean, you can't just do scones all the time, right?
No, we can't do scones. But quite fortunately, I've got a huge cupboard of recipe books, and my husband and my children like cooking as well. So between all of us, we've got enough ideas for things that we can put in there, and they're always quite happy to do some taste testing too. So
brilliant. And Alison, what are you working on?
Do you want the truth or what I tell the publisher? No, I'm actually under contract for a next book, but she wants it to be fun. and it's hard sitting down feeling fun some days. And but actually, since I've come here, I've got an idea, and I'm just going to go off and write it and quickly. But she said she's taken away my deadline, and now I feel I can write it, which is I think I'm difficult. I don't know. She said, no, just write your best book. So yeah, and make it fun. And you have to write yours charming. You know, you're cooking, you're going to put in recipes. I have to be fun. And the charming Ellie here to my left.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Performance anxiety. Once you get a deadline, it's awful. Like, yeah, but I'm under contract for a 5th book as well, and I am underway. We'll leave it at that.
Ellie, can I ask, is it set in Ireland or?
No, it's actually, this one is set in Australia, which is totally new for me. And I wonder, is it, because again, I don't know why, but I wonder, is it to do with the pandemic and then I didn't get to travel back to Ireland? So I was inspired by my local community and environment, and so I think that's a big part of it, that I didn't get to go back. So I'm writing it, it's set in Australia, and again, it's quite, there's little nuances, little differences, because I write in kind of an Irish English style, and I'm now writing Australian English, which again, it's slightly nuanced, a little bit different, and to try and get that right is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Jocks are on.
Oh, thank you. Maya, 4 sisters, 4 books. You said you've got another one coming, but where do you go?
So that's been a bit of a challenge, in that I should have written 10 sisters, and that would have made it easier, because I could have just continued on in the little world that I'm in. So I think that's been a little bit of a tricky thing for me. I've taken the new series, and it will be a series. I've just signed contracts for another 2 books, so that's my 2024 and 2025 book. South Australia. So I'm going across, I'm a South Australian girl myself, I'm going across the border to the wine country of Coonawarra. So instead of being based on a family with 4 sisters, this will be based on friends. So each book will be about a different friend in this friendship circle. So yes, but I do feel like I should have written, more sisters to make it easier for myself, because I've already built that world. Now I need to build a whole new world, which is a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Gus doesn't have there's not a...
Angus, yes.
Angus, there's no sort of, no, we won't go there. Yep. Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to say you sold me on romantic fiction. I haven't read any since I was 14, Mills and Booth stuff, so you guys are just wonderful. But my question is actually to Alison, and it's a bit of a sidebar, because you said you were talking about your writing, and you write for children, and then you moved into the romantic fiction. But you also said you write chapter books for the American market. Now, are we talking reading age 8? What are we talking here?
Yeah, it's for a big educational publisher in America. So it's quite specific. I've got to do so many words, so many chapters, but it's bread and butter, and I'm not a very fussy writer. Like, I do it to earn a living a bit. So I've done lots of wonderful and weird things. I even wrote a series about talking fruit called Fruit in Boots, and I mean, I don't have much pride. I mean, that's... but Daphne is the one for my heart. Daphne's a book that I wish my parents were still alive to see. Yeah, I always think they would have laughed, and especially quite a lot of it, like the mother has met the Queen and everything, like my mother did, and a lot of Mum's history, and she really enjoyed that, didn't she, Rob? Yeah, Mr.
I think the Queen really enjoyed it. From
Well, she did look, and apparently she did look at Mum when Mum had to learn how to curtsy for her. Yeah, so they would have got a lot of, and it's a very Melbourne book. But just thought, I do set the psychiatric facility is on the road to Hamilton. And is it Stony Rises, or what's the name?
Yeah.
Horton Gully? Yes, it's around near there, and it's near Hamilton. So I do have a rural thing. So I love that. And they all got, it's a very beautiful place. But I had to check up, there wasn't really one there, or else that would be terrible, because something terrible, they're very sloppy, the people looking at them. And I'm sure Hamilton are very, sorry, I don't want to give away, you have to read the book to find out what happens.
Absolutely.
But
So you have to use American idiom language for that market.
yes, totally.
Are you conscious of actually writing cultural difference into them? I've banned American writing for all the little kids that age in my life. But
I actually had a book, it came out here first, but Simon & Schuster, who are a really huge company in there, they bought it, and so it's a picture book, and I thought, and I'm pragmatic, I think whatever, I sold it, I'll get to lots of people and share the word and all that stuff, but they had to write faucet instead of tap, and I'm thinking, you can see it's a tap, like, it's just, things were very obvious, but they would not have anything that would challenge the children at all, which is just, but I don't mind. That's why I said I'm very pragmatic, Brendan. But okay, whatever you want, tell me to jump and I'll jump. And but
As long as it doesn't rhyme with erotica, you're
well, I think that means a lot about the Americans. I had no idea why they didn't like robotica. I had to ask. Yeah.
oh, well, thank you for that. I found that really interesting.
Thank you. Any last questions? I've just got one that I'll ask. How are you approaching the pandemic in your future work? Or are you, or is it always going to be set in 2016?
For me, I'm just quite happy to not mention it, because people will pick up my stories for an escape to the country, and that's one of the lovely review lines that will come through on Goodreads, and the different reviewers will say this is an escape to the country. I read it when I was in the middle of chemotherapy, or I was caring for my sick husband or something like that. People read mine for an escape, so they don't want to know necessarily about the pandemic. You can pick up lots of books that can deal with it really well. For me, it's just not a thing. And I don't specify what year my books are set in, so I don't say it's deliberately pre-2019, or I don't say it's deliberately post-2022. Yep. It just is without being a particular year. And
yeah, but you're still covering contemporary things in it,
absolutely.
which is, I think you manage that really, really well.
I was talking to my publisher, and she's fantastic, but she goes, well, I thought, please make me not mention it. She said, you've got to mention it, but let's just throw in a few masks now and then when they go to concert hall, because she said you can't, she felt, but I'm not straight romantic fiction, like I'm quite hard to classify, and she said you can't just, you have to, it's there, but she said don't try to get away from it because you're meant to be fun, but but yes, I'm just going to have masks and sanitizers when you enter buildings, I think,
Yeah, I'm addressing it. I have it in this new book because it's the setting for this new book is in like a beach town, and I one of my characters has made a sea change during COVID. Another one is she's about 19 and she started uni, but it's post having had 2 years of homeschooling, and she's just not prepared for it. So I'm definitely bringing it into my characters, because I think it's, for me anyway, like it's something we've all gone through, and I want to explore it. I want to explore the aftermath, which fingers crossed that's what we're in. But and how, like, we still have those, you walk into Woolies and the stickers are still on the floors, the social distancing, and none of us are doing it, but it's like this lingering fingerprint, like it's there, it's still very, even though none of us want to talk about it anymore. But for my characters in this new book, it's definitely a part of their lives, and I want to see where they go post-COVID. Yeah.
Well, please join me in thanking Maya, Alison, and Ellie for their excellent and they will be available for signing, or if you want to have a quick chat as you buy their book.
And a big round of applause for Rob McDonald.